Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, a chaotic city council meeting includes ad hominem attacks, a 4-member walkout, but the future of the budget remains uncertain. Former Mayor Lenny Curry says he's not seeking re-election, but is increasingly vocal about city business. Law enforcement across the state stops enforcing a ban on the open carry of weapons. The state attorney declines to investigate alleged Sunshine Law violations. A Southside surf park could be in line for millions in city incentives, and a black motorist files suit over a viral punching incident. To talk about all that and more, I'm joined by Mike Mendenhall, City Hall reporter and associate editor at Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Ann. Thanks for having me.
Robin Lumb, former Jacksonville City Council member. Welcome back, Robin.
Thank you.
Jim Piggott, former City Hall reporter at News4Jax. Hi, Jim.
Hey, it's great to be here, and what a week.
What a week. And first-timer Christina Burgess. She is a reporter at First Coast News. So great to have you. Thanks for being on today.
Good morning, Ann. Thanks for having me.
All right. So the City Council budget meeting Tuesday, it included these walkouts, insults, some swear words are almost there, but no budget certainty. Mike, Christina, you were both at this marathon meeting this week. And there were a few official reasons for the tension. There was a question of whether to roll back property tax and whether to attach a rider, essentially, to the budget, limiting some of the things that that money can be spent on. Let's start, Mike, with you, because the vote went back and forth for some time. There was so many votes and revotes and hand votes and recounts. What was the upshot of what happened at this meeting?
Yeah, so essentially, let's start with the millage rate. So the city council president and most of the city council finance committee has been wanting to scale back the city's property tax millage rate for some time now. So there were several votes to try to pass that rate. Ultimately, what happened was they actually advanced Mayor Deegan's proposed millage rate, which is flat, which is what we're currently paying right now. But the city council folks that want to lower it didn't actually have the votes that night to get that lower millage rate passed. So basically, they punted that to the next meeting until September 23rd. When it came to the budget fight, like you mentioned, Councilmember Rory Diamond has been pushing what he's calling his big, beautiful budget amendments, which essentially would prohibit any city funds from going to DEI initiatives, abortion services, or to undocumented immigrants. Now, the City Council Auditor's Office and several other entities have said that the city's currently not paying for any of that, but he's still been pushing it. And there was a concerted effort by a kind of a bipartisan coalition to try to pull that out of the budget on Tuesday night. And ultimately, they succeeded for now. It's kind of temporarily they were able to get that removed. That was sparked by a walkout by 4 city council members, 4 Democratic city council members. They left the chambers, which kind of left the remaining council members scrambling because they didn't have enough votes to actually advance or pass the tentative budget.
And so, Christina, the walkout really was kind of a moment in that council meeting. And we'll talk to Robin a little bit about kind of what precedent there is for that, if any. But this was a tough meeting. I want to take a quick listen to what Matt Carlucci had to say at one point during this meeting, and then I want to ask you about that.
This is unprecedented BS. It's mean-spirited. It doesn't belong in this budget. Good for the council member who's going to go tweet it all out tonight. What a brave conservative patriot he is. But it's baloney. So
Carlucci on baloney there. He's obviously kind of speaking to the council member behind this amendment, Rory Diamond, who does have a bit of a Twitter presence, I guess you'd say. So how did it feel to be in that chamber? Because it was full up. There was, people representing public safety there, concerned that, they might be seeing cuts, an entire community of people and nonprofits concerned about, rolling back the millage rate.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just feel it just as you're sitting in your seat. You can see the people there front row is public safety. So they're right there. And even at times, council members are talking to them and being like, we want to support you. We want to do our best for you. Same with some council members wanting to address residents, saying like, we hear what you're saying. And when it got to the amendments, I think that's when you could really feel the tension based off of, I think, what the council members were saying, when they were addressing Diamond, and they were saying, the verbiage in this isn't needed in a city budget. This is not something to talk about in local government. Maybe this is something for what we kept hearing was in Washington, D.C., Tallahassee, but not in Jacksonville. That was something that we kept hearing. So when the walkout happened, I know I'm looking up, everyone's looking up like, okay, this is happening. This is happening. They're leaving. And you could tell by the faces of those that were still in there that it was the shock factor. And then I had the chance to speak with one of the council members, Councilmember Johnson, who was the first one kind of leading what looked like he was leading the group. And when I spoke with him later, he said, this was kind of a gut reaction. This was not a planned walkout. We didn't say, hey, if this happens, we're going to leave. But he was just like, it felt like the right thing to do, because in these amendments, it felt like, there was words there that were targeting me, targeting communities right here in Jacksonville, and it's not needed. And so that's why he said he did what he did.
And he said that he felt like the language was basically telling entire groups of people, you don't exist, you don't matter, and that his constituency was among those that he felt like were being dismissed or basically erased.
Yeah, those were his exact words. And he was, he sits maybe one or two people down from the councilman who introduced this. And so he was just like, I just felt it was not right, and it made me uncomfortable. And so he was like, and I'm going to keep being that voice. I asked him, I said, do you feel like your message was heard, once you walked out? And he was like, yes. And he's like, I'll keep fighting. I'll keep walking out. He also said the mayor had called him and asked him, was everything okay? And then, later on, we know that those 4 council members eventually do come back in and they try to continue with the proceedings. But yeah, that was a big moment.
Yeah.
Serious.
Robin Lumb, I want to ask you about that, because Raul Arias got up kind of as that was happening, or right after that was happening. He's the chair of the finance committee. And he said, what the heck just happened? He basically said, the more conservative Republican elements of the council have been accused of colluding on things, or working together on things, or in some cases, as we'll talk about, texting one another about matters before the council. But, he was basically like, this wasn't some sort of spontaneous walkout. This basically looked like a coordinated effort of some kind. And I'm curious your thought about that, because it does seem surprising to think that 4 people would be compelled to get up and leave a city council meeting. Do you think that looked like an orchestrated event?
Yeah, possibly. I remember Jim and I were talking before the show about something that happened in the late 1980s when Denise Lee and several others walked out of a city council meeting, and the council president ordered their arrest and their return. So I don't know. So much of this looks like political theater. And what I thought was really interesting, too, some of the comments that Rory Diamond made after the meeting about how he thinks this might eventually wind up with the state of Florida. Because if you don't pass a budget by the end of September, then the state of Florida gets to decide, makes all the budget decisions. And he seems to think that somehow this is eventually going to wind up going back to the state, which would require basically city council to not pass a budget. So
he almost sounded as if he'd prefer it. I mean, he said,
yes,
this isn't going away. This is, meaning his amendment, this is going to be in the budget. There is literally nothing you can do to stop it. And he said, he'd almost prefer to have it in the hands of Tallahassee than in the hands of some of the colleagues that he says he doesn't trust.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll find out. I think city council is going to wind up passing a budget. I don't know what it's going to look like. I will point out, though, that the budget, the $2 billion budget, is, when I was on city council, we were just under $1 billion. So if you look at the increase in spending since that time, and I left office in 2015, the rate of increase in city spending has exceeded the rate of inflation by just over 100%. So if they were budgeting according to the rate of inflation, it would be about $1.5 billion. It's $2 billion.
During your tenure too, there was not just there was serial rollbacks, right, of the property tax rate.
No, was actually in 2013. We voted for what was, I think, the current millage rate is 11.3169. I think there have been a couple of very minor reductions, but yeah, we actually voted to increase the millage rate because Mayor Brown gave us a budget that was out of balance by $53 million, and there really would have had to have been serious cuts, including cuts to public safety.
Jim, I'm curious your thoughts about this. Is this one of those weeks where you miss being at City Hall?
Oh, of course. I was listening to the reports on that meeting, and I was going, "Oh my God, that walkout! To me, that's major." And correct me if I'm wrong. He ordered the arrest. Correct? He wanted them to bring back the council members.
At this meeting, he called for the sergeant at arms
Arms to bring-
to make sure that nobody else left. I think he
But,
wanted to
nobody
maintain
else.
a quorum,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Exactly.
and as Robin and I were talking in 1989, when Denise Lee, Warren
Warren
Jones,
Jones.
and I'm trying to think of the third. I think she had since passed away as well.
Wiley?
But walked out of the meeting, and
So-
they were arrested, and that caused a
Huge.
huge protest.
Well, they were also all three black city council members,
as
and
well, saying
and that was a
this budget was going against them. There were floods in Jacksonville then, and they wanted things, for the neighborhoods, for the community. It was unfair. And Tilly Fowler, who had since passed away, was the president at the time, ordered the arrest and said, bring them back. Eventually, how all that ended was, there, if you recall, there was a huge downtown protest. The black community came out, marched downtown. As a result of that, I'm going, here we go again. But as Robin and I were talking too at this time, at that time, council members worked together in a way. And later on, you didn't have this partisan that's going on now, like, oh, I'm a Democrat. I'm not going to listen to what you're saying. I'm a Republican. There's no way I'm going to bend. And that's what's causing problems here. Jacksonville needs this to come together, to move ahead. And like you said, we're going to have this meeting next week to pass this budget. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's
If you're in Tallahassee serving the legislature, you're basically a creature of the caucus. So, and that's just the way it is. But we don't operate with with caucuses in city council. There are no Republican Democrat caucuses. So my recollection, and maybe I'm being a bit of a Pollyanna here, but my recollection was when I was on city council, there was a high degree of collegiality, and there was virtually no partisanship. So it was very, very common for Republicans and Democrats to line up on one side of the issue and then others on the other. It was pretty.
I feel like there'd be very divisive issues, but they tended to be about things that like the neighborhoods cared about, whether you were going to approve this zoning change or weren't going to approve this zoning change. They really tended to be around ideas, the riffs that existed. And you really didn't hear about party ever back in those days.
And I was the vice chairman of the Republican Party at the time.
Yeah,
right.
So I kept politics out of it.
And you have Roy Diamond bringing in these issues that aren't even part of the issues of the budget, which is just crazy. And I'm just watching that happen. And, as a reporter, I always stood back before and never took sides on it. But now I just go, this is nuts.
I thought that Canamero had a really interesting line where he said, in this debate, I've learned that I'm too conservative to be a Democrat, but I'm too pragmatic to be a Republican. He ended up voting with this bipartisan coalition that was trying to take out those limits on spending on DEI or undocumented immigrants. He basically says there's no line item that is, attributed to any of those specifically. Like there's no line item for abortion spending. There's no line item for DEI spending. So the general counsel was asked about that. It sounds like the general counsel has come back with an opinion just even in the last 24 hours saying, you might be able to veto, that particular amendment that has been attached to the budget, but it would only need a 10-vote majority to override that veto. And so, again, this seems like the folks who want this limitation and these restrictions on spending, Mike, might ultimately have their way.
Yeah, I mean, it's also important to remember that at that meeting, Chris Miller, who's also a Republican, who's supportive of the millage rate reduction, he was not in attendance. He was actually overseas. He was in Israel on an official visit. So once they have that full 19, it's going to become increasingly hard for the folks that do not want that amendment in the budget to be in there. And it's interesting. It's kind of down into the minutia, but a normal bill at City Council to override a mayoral veto takes 2/3 majority. In this situation, because it's in the budget, because it's an amendment, a line item amendment to the budget, the general counsel's opinion that came out yesterday said that it only takes to 10 votes. So it's very procedural. But in that same opinion, they also said that the amendment, even though there wasn't a specific line items for DEI, abortion, or undocumented immigrants, it still can be in the budget. It's a policy. It's a policy. A policy amendment that's similar to other type of policy amendments that does control how the city spends its finances. So that opinion was kind of, you couldn't really consider it a win for the Deegan administration or for the folks that would like to see that amendment in there. And one other thing too I thought was interesting from that meeting was that the way that they got the council members back in the chamber was they're like, okay, well, we're going to reconsider this tax vote.
It was kind of a fake out.
It was a fake out. It's like
Yeah.
now that you're gone, we can lower the millage rate now. And so Councilmember Ron Salem brought that up.
And they all came hustling back.
They all came hustling back, and then he withdrew it. So clearly, it was just a ploy to get him back in so they could get the tentative budget through and end the meeting.
I feel like there was so much of that happening at that meeting, Christina. And again, I mean, one of the points that was made by one of the council members is like, why, we're such a diverse body here. We have, Blacks, we have people of Arabic descent, Hispanics, Anglos. There's this great diversity of opinion and background. I would say the one thing that it lacks in diversity is women. There are just 2 of 19 city council members. About 10% of that body is women. And so I wonder, well, I'll just let you comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you added that and mentioned that, because I know Jacoby Pittman in particular was a woman, one of the 2, who was very vocal when it came to abortion even being discussed as, I know, one of those 3 issues that are within those amendments. And she was like, I'm sure a lot of the women in the crowd, they were able to speak up and say their thoughts on this. They would say this has no business even being discussed in a room like this. So I think that was really big. And I just wanted to add to Mike's point about how it was something that was echoed a lot on how, in 2 weeks, this will be a different outcome in regards to the millage. That was kind of echoed. I want to say Council President Carrico kind of said it in 2 weeks, we'll see how this will go. Even when we had the multiple votes on the millage, when Ron Salem had to change his nay to a yay just for proceedings to continue, he was like, in 2 weeks, he's like, I still support the reduction.
Yeah.
So that was something that I was like, on September 23rd, I know when all eyes and ears are on it, we're going to see how it ends up going.
I just wonder how residents are even expected to follow all this, though, Jim. It just seems so alienating.
And it's so difficult, as you mentioned, everything that, okay, we voted for this, we didn't vote for this.
My vote counts now, but it doesn't count now.
And as we've talked about this before during budget hearings in August, when they kind of set all of this up, where we're going to go in the council committees. And Robin, you may comment on this. It kind of, then when you get into September, all of this was basically rubber stamped in the past. There were some changes, but it would have gone through. We already knew where the budget was going to go. We already knew if there was going to be a tax hike or a tax decrease.
When the finance committee was handling it.
When the finance committee meets, they had it. But this year, and I've always said, people, you've got to listen to what they're doing. If you want any changes made in your neighborhood, you got to go to those hearings. And I know that's boring as could be, but that's where it all happens. Go ahead.
I'd just like to make one point too about this millage rate cut. It's political theater. It's absurdly small. If the average person who has a house with $50,000 of taxable value, this tax cut would put about another $40 a year in their pocket. That's how this is posturing. I think the real inequities here are the fact that I have a house in Riverside that probably would go for the middle 5 figures. My property taxes are under $1,000 a year. Other people who have purchased properties recently are paying through the nose, even on homesteaded properties. They're paying $4,000 or $5,000 a year. That's the inequity.
Yeah. And that's not easily remedied because that's built into the system that protects existing homeowners from rapid increases in taxes. It's designed to help protect people who are already homeowners.
Goes back to the Save Our Homes amendments and portability.
All right.
It's going to be interesting what the mayor does and all of this and what we're going to see happen when all of this. I mean, the theater's not over yet. It's going to be a show.
Yeah, it is for sure. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Mike Mendenhall, Robin Lumb, Jim Piggott and Christina Burgess about the week's headlines. You can join the conversation by giving us a call at 904-549-2937 or emailing us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air, and you can watch our live stream on the Facebook or WJCT channel on YouTube. We've got a call from Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
I think the operative phrase is what you just said. This is a show. This is a performance. We no longer have public servants. We have politicians who are auditioning for their next job. Many of these men have businesses, and I don't know if they run their business like they're running the city, where they're going to give a discount on a sale at their restaurant, but what are they going to do on the back end? They're going to do like an offset of a tax deduction. They're playing in our faces, and they feel like we don't have any recourse because they have a supermajority. The people who walked out of the council probably felt like the people in Texas probably had the same threats. And it seems like it's really amazing that Democrats walk out because they're in the minority, because to get people's attention, like, this is serious. And other people say, no, it's a game. You know, you need to get back in here. We're going to have you arrested. I was here when the former city council people were arrested. It's amazing. Democrats and brown people get arrested a lot in the city of Jacksonville when they're in politics. Why would anybody actually run for office in that case? It's a joke, people. It's a joke. I'm for the millage increase for stability because I can see the services. Don't cut $40 from me. We can recycle cans and get that. Okay? Bye.
Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it. I do want to move on now to a different topic, to a court ruling that is already changing the rules around guns in Florida. Court at the appellate level finding that Florida's open carry ban is unconstitutional, that it is, quote, incompatible with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. So what we're seeing now is local law enforcement already telling their officers, if you see someone open carrying, don't arrest them, don't stop them, and don't question them. Robin Lumb, I just want to start with you on this. Clay County JSO saying that this is essentially in effect. We know that the court decision has been made. There's some procedural stuff that could happen.
Court of Appeals,
right.
So I don't know if this will wind up in the Supreme Court. I've always been in favor of open carry. Florida is actually in a minority. Almost every state in the union has some form of open carry. Sometimes it requires a permit. There are limitations on where you can carry. But I've always been in favor of open carry. But talking to a former member of law enforcement in my family, here's something people need to consider, and they need to consider this very carefully. If I'm someplace where I'm allowed to do open carry, and I'm in a confrontation with somebody else who's doing open carry, and there is a, quote unquote, as law enforcement likes to say, an altercation, and that person that I'm arguing with, or a person that's being as part of this altercation, takes his hand and puts it on his weapon, that's almost an excuse for a shootout. Because at that point, the person who's being threatened could reasonably say, I was in reasonable fear of my life.
I get to stand my ground.
There's one other problem, too, with the way the law is currently written, and this also goes back to that same law enforcement officer in my family. If I'm carrying in the small of my back, which is typically where I would carry, and a police officer can see the outline of what he thinks is a weapon, that's called printing. And under existing law, which says concealed carry is not legal, you could theoretically be arrested for that. And I think that was pretty extreme. But
in terms of law enforcement and the member in your family, typically law enforcement has not been in favor of open carry. And they are now going to be allowing for it in their enforcement, but law enforcement hasn't really loved the idea of people walking around with rifles on their shoulders or handguns on their hips or on their backs.
I can assure you people are walking around every day in the state of Florida concealed carry.
Sure.
It's everywhere. And so the question is, does law enforcement, if they're stopping somebody, do they want to, are they... One of the questions I'll ask immediately, too, is do you have a weapon in the car, or you have a weapon with you, that kind of thing. But it's going to take some getting used to.
It seems like it is certainly a difference in in the feel of a place if people are open carrying. And you're right. I mean, there's many people in Florida that are concealed carrying. I mean, there's areas that are going to continue to be to have this prohibition in place where you can't have an open carry, and that includes courthouses, sheriff's offices, police offices, some government buildings, schools, K through 12, school-sponsored events, school buses, colleges and universities, airports, polling places, and bars, or places that primarily serve alcohol. But I think tonight I'm going to a concert at the St. Augustine Amphitheater. It is not a privately owned property. It is a public venue. It's not a building. You have to wonder where, is the line going to be drawn at some places like that? What are we hearing, so far? It's pretty new, Christina.
Yeah, and I'm kind of, excuse me, I'm glad that you also kind of added on kind of the uncertainty in a sense of like if someone is going a place. I think now when we step out our door, anywhere we go, we're, wanting to be vigilant. We're wanting to make sure we're safe. We're keeping our loved ones safe, our family safe. And so, I mean, there's kind of that alert that is there, but it's also just making sure that you are educated and informed on what is and isn't allowed. I covered the Second Amendment sales tax holiday this week, and I know when the governor announced that, he also hit on the open carrying, naturally supporting that. But when I was out kind of speaking in the community as well with residents on the sales tax holiday, some of them also just shared their thoughts on what they were also thinking, and just it was mixed. It was people on the side of I'm gonna have what I need on me, and other people of just being like just that safety risk. And so I just think safety is just always at top of mind.
Yeah, we've
constantly.
got a call from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I am against this open carry. I understand the argument that you would be able to shoot somebody else if they put their hand on a gun. However, we are going in the wrong direction in this country. And how are regular people supposed to know if somebody with a gun going into the grocery store is just a citizen carrying their gun openly, or somebody who's about to shoot us? Like, I'm so sorry. I disagree with this, and I disagree with the argument that now we are all supposed to be just in a shootout.
Sally, thanks for your call. We've got a call.
I have to. Sally makes valid points. That's going to freak me out. I'm sorry. If I'm walking down the street and somebody, I know open carry, you support that, but I can't imagine walking down Bay Street here with people holsters.
By the way, I'm not in favor of shootouts.
No. Understand that.
I'm very much against shootouts.
But
I'm simply saying that that's something people need to consider. There needs to be a lot of public education that needs to go into this.
Sure. But I mean, to Jim's point, with so many mass shootings that happen, being able to discern between what is a threat, what is just somebody lawfully, openly carrying could be hard for some people.
It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable.
Would you ever get into an argument or criticize somebody if you see a gun on them? I mean, really, I'm serious.
As long as they're not carrying them at city council, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't.
We've got a call from Curtis on the north side. Good morning, Curtis. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ed. I'm against open carry. My question is, where does the liability or the course of action for anyone who's involved of those stray bullets? If they kill someone is injured, someone's property is damaged, the storefront, how are they going to regulate that and control that? And who's at fault? Thank you.
All right. Thanks. That's a good question. Anyone have thoughts on that?
Again, I'm against shootouts. It's prior to the changes in law, which now allow any person who can legally own a firearm to concealed carry. So I used to have I have a concealed carry permit. There were very few problems with people who were doing concealed carry. But I don't know. There's going to be a lot of public education required.
I mean, there used to be some permitting required, did there not, to be able to concealed carry? Even you'd have to take some lessons, safety lessons.
Yeah, you had to. There's a basic course you had to pass. So I have back in those days, I got a concealed carry permit,
I'm not sure
which I'll continue to carry because if I go to another state, they'll only recognize my right to have a concealed weapon if I have a Florida concealed carry permit.
The safety training, though, I believe is no longer required. to get that kind of a.
Well, there is no permitting requirement.
Right.
It's anybody who can legally possess a firearm can conceal carry.
And a felon cannot, which is worth pointing out.
Right.
Mike.
I used to cover public safety when I was a reporter in the state of Iowa, and I remember interviewing a county sheriff who was talking about when they were debating permitless carry in that state. And one of his biggest concerns at the time was that if permitless carry was good to went into effect, that they would even have trouble doing recruitment for law enforcement, because there was, particularly in the rural areas where there's even less ability or decreased ability for technology and to be able to understand who's carrying and who's not, that would actually impact their ability to get officers just out of fear. And I thought that was kind of an interesting point. And they and of course at that time too, the sheriff's deputies in the counties in Iowa actually had a lot of discretion as to who could issue a permit, for concealed carry and not. So it's kind of interesting just how things have changed.
Well, and I think you got to talk a little bit about what this happening this week, this ruling coming this week with the political assassination that occurred this week. I mean,
and the school shooting in Colorado.
I think that a lot of people are on edge. We're seeing threats made to black colleges. We're seeing all types of things happening this week, and I mean,
we're
going to see a lot of
time
there's
politically.
going to be. I mean, what happened, is such a shame, and both sides need to. People need to speak out and
the open carry people have always been very careful of talking about, gun safety and obeying the law. And by the way, there are over 400 million handguns and rifles in this country. So
it's a lot.
They're everywhere.
We've got a question from Michael on the north side. Good morning, Michael. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Two quick questions. What type of guns are allowed to be openly carried now? Is it long guns and guns or just handguns? And then the second question is, before this change, if I'm out somewhere and I see a person approach with a gun, I immediately know I'm in danger. Now with this change, if I'm out somewhere, a guy walks up with a rifle strapped across his back or his chest, and this is legal now, I have no idea what this guy's intent is. He could walk up with a smile on his face and blow everybody's brains out. So it just doesn't make sense to me. So how are we supposed to know when we're in danger and when we are not? I have a concealed weapons permit, so I carry mine concealed. I would never want to put somebody in a situation where they're afraid because I have my gun out. What's the point?
By the way, I think the legislature is going to be able to step in and probably do some regulating on that topic. I don't think that makes regulations on open carry completely off limits to the Florida House and the Senate. I think that's going to be within the
currently. Do you know the answer to his question about whether there's some guns that are?
I don't know if long guns are included. I'm guessing that long guns are included in this. All
that
firearms.
They are. All firearms are included.
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I haven't seen any differentiation. We've got a call from John in Riverside. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, what I want to say is if we have the open carry here in Florida, it'll be the final nail in the coffin of Florida tourism industry. We've already pissed off the world, especially the Canadians. They're not coming in anymore. We have a Surgeon General here in Florida that's going to cause measles outbreaks in the theme parks. People from other countries where there isn't this liberal gun policy are going to be scared when they see people with rifles over their shoulders. If we have a measles outbreak at one of the theme parks, SeaWorld will be a fish market by the midterms. Add to that the threat of wackos running around because they think they have to play cowboy with a gun on their hip so they make sure everybody knows they mean business. It's going to be a threat that people will not accept. They will not spend their money here, and Florida is dependent on tourism.
John, thanks for your call. We also have a call from Steve at the Beaches. Good morning, Steve. Go ahead.
Hey, I love the guy's comments before me. The absurdity of open carry. You have a reporter or something on your panel that's advocating open carry. And I'd like him to explain how police and people like me who don't want to do that are going to feel with a bunch of cowboys, rednecks, walking around with guns, saying they're protecting themselves, and what they're doing is showing off how powerful they can be. It's absurd.
Is that directed at me?
I believe so.
Well, first of all, I don't like the term rednecks. I think that's a disparaging, and I think we should stay away from that kind of rhetoric. It's going to take some getting used to. I think that most people who are law-abiding citizens are going to be fairly discreet when it comes to making decisions on open carry. I know that when I walk, the only time I'm absolutely armed is at night when I'm walking my dogs in Riverside, because there was a shootout 2 blocks from my house a couple of years ago, and my wife just barely avoided that. That's the Julio Fulio shootout that occurred at that time. I think there's going to be a lot of discretion. I can understand that law enforcement is uncomfortable, but they know right now that when they stop somebody, it's a traffic stop, one of the first things they need to determine is whether that person is carrying a concealed weapon. And there's got to be a lot of public education involved in this.
I want to take one more call on this topic before we move on. John from the West Side, go ahead.
Yes, I was calling because my concern is that in our society, with the accessibility of weapons and now with this open carry law, that people don't use common sense in terms of dealing with issues, disagreements, using the normal, tools that we have available to us. The society is pushing more and more towards violence in movies, violence in video games. There's no education of our population in terms of how you deal with disagreements other than violence.
John, thanks for your thoughts, and unfortunately all too true. I do want to move on now to a topic that has been in the headlines, in part because he's creating these headlines. Mayor Curry, sort of 2.0. He has been very much back in the public sphere and appears to be enjoying it. He wrote a column for the Times-Union that was published recently, and then an article in the Florida Times-Union that appeared in the Monday paper Above the Fold. He actually tweeted out a picture of it saying it's an Above the Fold Monday. You're showing a picture of that on our live stream. And he's, actively posting on X about the tax relief that the city council is looking at. So are we expecting to see more Curry in the future? Jim Piggott.
From what I'm hearing, and I haven't spoke with him, so I don't know, is that he's not interested in running for mayor again, but who knows? Yeah. I mean, we're hearing a lot from him.
He said he thinks the council and the city needs new blood. He sounds like he's not, but he is very much interested in weighing in on the tax issue. And he is, it's sort of something that he said he wouldn't do when he was out of office. He sort of said, once you're out of office, you're done. I'll observe that when he tweeted that at one point during Jake Godbold's pushback on JEA.
But I'm just curious, though. I know, and knowing the former mayor, I know he's going to speak out. I know he's going to have things to say. You, Robin, I know you would know what Lenny Curry is maybe up to now. You were head of the Republican Party at one time,
Well,
correct?
he and I worked closely back when he was party chair, so starting in 2008. So of all the people in City Hall that had the longest relationship with him, it was me and Sharon Conway, who was his, in private life, was his administrative aide when he was running his private company. Let me tell you where I think this is going. I think that Lenny Curry is getting ready to run statewide for a chief financial officer. There's very little love lost between Mr. Curry and Blaise Ingolio, who was appointed to replace Jimmy Petronas when Petronas was elected to Congress.
And is the current CFO.
And appointee of the governor, and I guess confirmed by the legislature or likely to be confirmed by the legislature. I think this is Curry getting ready to run statewide. I think this is going to be another proxy war between the Trump, Susie Wiles side and Governor DeSantis. I think Curry is going to be is virtually assured the Trump endorsement if this happens.
Well, with Susie, of course.
I believe yes. the way all these things play out, yes. He's a close ally of Susie Wiles. and he'll be able to raise a ton of money. I think he still works for Ballard, right? Isn't
Yeah,
he still
Ballard. He's
okay.
lobbying for Ballard Partners.
Right, and so Ballard is going to be able to raise a ton of money. Florida has is the Wild West of campaign finance. Dark money PACs proliferate. There are political action committees out there whose only other donors are other political action committees. So you can't tell who the donors or special interests are. So there, and he's aligned with Tim Baker, who's aligned with one of the a person in Gainesville who runs over 150 different political action committees. So this is all coming together, and I think that's the play. And because Curry might have some negatives here in Duval County, he'll be able to escape those running statewide, and because he'll probably be able to outraise Ingolio. That's my take on this. That's my theory.
And Robert, what you're talking about, I think a lot of people won't know those names. Tim Baker, Susie Wiles, even though she's Trump's current chief of staff. But all of that is going to really come into play to what we're going to see. He listens to your show, I am sure. And it would be interesting if he'd call us right now.
Yeah, he's called a couple times. We did invite him
Right.
on the show to sort of talk about some of these issues, and we're hoping that he will take us up on that, because I would love to talk to him. It's interesting. He is maybe planning a statewide push, as Robin says, but he's very much involved in the local right now on this tax increase, and he is championing the city council and Kevin Carrico, who's sort of one of his mentees, I guess. So he seems poised to continue to be very vocal on this, Christina.
Yeah, that was interesting for me to see. I know I'm fairly new to Jacksonville still, so I wasn't here when Lenny Curry was mayor, but I did read on what he said, and so it kind of made my ears perk up to see that a former mayor, he did give his opinion on the millage rate cut, and he even was like, during my time here, my final year, he talked about what he did and how they found savings in the budget. They still kept their commitment to public safety and other essential services.
Mhm.
So I thought, that stood out to me. And will it play a factor in 2 weeks on September 23rd?
I mean, his record on tax increases is a little mixed. He did orchestrate a cut. He also orchestrated an increase of the gas tax. He doubled that the council approved, and then extended an existing tax cut for the Better Jacksonville Plan money to help resolve the pension fund crisis. And so, he's a little bit all over that. But he indicated that he'd like to see more than an eighth cut.
Well, Mike, I'm sure you've got plenty on that as well.
Oh, pardon me. Yeah, I've also not spoken with former Mayor Curry on this, so I don't have a ton of knowledge of his inner thoughts and workings. But he like Christina said, he definitely has supported a millage rate cut, and I think you can tell that a lot of what he's doing, whether it be on social media, is definitely trying to guide maybe the city council, finance committee, and his allies on city council and put public pressure on Mayor Deegan as well.
If you recall, we used to hear from Mayor Godbold, former Mayor Godbold. He would speak out on issues on this. Not hearing anything from John Payton at all in some time as well, and Alvin Brown.
Well, the mayor was on the program yesterday and noted that John Payton, as a member of the Civic Council, has signed that letter opposing the millage rate rollback. And she also noted that she's had strong support from John Delaney and from John Payton and from Alvin Brown, but not so much from Curry. But we are going to have to leave it there. And there's topics we're not getting to. So unfortunately, there's so much to talk about this week. But thanks so much for being here. Jim Piggott, Robin Lumb, Mike Mendenhall, Christina Burgess. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. All right, we'll be right back in just a minute to talk about a local songwriter showcase.
Congaree & Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
On the next Florida Roundup, President Donald Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill and health care. The law makes changes to 2 health insurance programs that hundreds of thousands of Floridians rely on, Medicaid and Obamacare. Do you rely on those programs for your health insurance? How much is it and what's the coverage like? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then be sure to join us Friday, noon until 1.
This week on Science Friday, why our obsession with finding alien life? Well, it's not a new thing.
2,500 years ago, you see this idea that all of these planets and stars and things, they might actually be physical places. They might not be divine entities.
Plus, how the tomato became related to the potato on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
Right-wing activist and President Trump ally Charlie Kirk is shot dead at a campus event in Utah. On the Friday News Roundup, the country tries to make sense of mounting political violence as Trump casts blame, plus immigration crackdowns in Chicago and Boston, and the Epstein saga sees movement on the Hill. The News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, local talent takes the stage at nearly 24 locations around St. Augustine as part of the 9th annual Sing Out Loud Festival. Here to tell us about the local artist showcase is Darren Ronan, singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist from the First Coast. Hey, Darren.
Hey.
We're also joined by our own Stacey Bennett, singer-songwriter with her band Folk is People, and of course, our producer here at First Coast Connect. Hi, Stacey.
Hi, Ann. Good to see you.
Good to see you on this side of the glass for a minute.
Been too long.
It has been too long. We heard a little of your band coming in there, a song that has had a fair amount of commercial success. You might hear it shopping at Old Navy, for instance. But this is your first step back into performing live in a little bit. So tell us about, first of all, how you're preparing for the Sing Out Loud Local Songwriters Showcase.
Yeah, it's been about a year and a half since we performed anywhere. So we got our dusters out, and it's just been sort of chaotic but fun to get everybody back together. I've had to modify some of my gear due to some injuries I sustained. So it's sort of been a journey. And I'm still not feeling great about it, but that's rock and roll.
That is rock and roll.
If you're not in pain, you're not playing.
You got to get up and plug it back in. Darren, you're going to be playing, Stacey's playing at the Colonial Oak venue, which is, for people who haven't been there, is awesome. I mean, it's trees and this beautiful lighting that's kind of hanging from these lovely old oak trees. You're going to be playing at Dog Rose Brewing, which is a great, brew, what do you call it?
Yes.
Brew room. It's just a cool bar.
Yeah, I haven't actually been there. I'm looking forward to being there.
Yeah, it's in Lincolnville. It's a super venue. But is this your first Sing Out Loud event?
It is my first Sing Out Loud.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your style of music, how you started performing, because you've done so much with so many really well-known performers.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. The story is, the short version is, my father was a country and western singer in the 50s. And so me and all my brothers just sort of took up music because of that. So he would sit around and sing occasionally, and so it was always fun to do that. So that's kind of, it's just in my blood.
Yeah,
So,
and you've done percussive stuff. You've done all kinds of instruments. And you've also played with, a variety of really famous people. You've played with Dick Dale, Vic Chestnut, Junior Brown, the Fabulous Thunderbirds. I mean, really a whole range of things. Has that experience changed the way that you do your own solo performing?
well, I mean, every time you see somebody and you're like, you see something you like, you're like, well, that's a good idea. I think I can borrow that. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stace, this is, we said the 9th year of Sing Out Loud, and, it's rooted in trying to broaden the local music scene and really, honor and draw attention to the local music here. I mean, there's sort of a big national headliner element too, but talk about, I mean, you've not only played it, but you've attended it, and these are a lot of people that you know and love that are performing as part of it.
Yeah, it's great that, they're bringing a lot of different artists together. I've actually met a lot of friends there, and I think when you're an independent artist, music, and you can probably speak to this too, is
hmm
probably only like 20% of what you do. You're also your booking agent, you're also your marketing agent, you're building your website. And a lot of what we do is like based on collaboration. And so meeting other people and working collaboratively to book shows and especially like bringing the regional artists in, like say, well, come play in Jacksonville or oh, come play in Gainesville. So it's really great. And they do workshops too. They've been really supportive of the local art scene.
And we should say, I mean, you've played alongside many great artists too, including, with Shovels and Rope, the late Justin Townes Earl. And so I'd ask you the same question, just kind of how those experiences shape what you bring to your band's performance.
That's a really good question. You're kind of in a silo when you're a songwriter. And so to play with people who are even different than you kind of pick up on things. I never thought of it that way. I've never tried to play that picking style. That's a really cool verse. I don't write like that, but let me try it. I've never thought to throw a minor seventh and that's, it kind of like challenges you.
Mhm.
I don't enjoy listening to jazz music, but I learn jazz music because it changes the way that I play. It gets me outside of my own head, and I think it adds to creativity.
Yeah, well, this is an excellent festival. So, Stace, as I said, you're going to be at the Colonial Oak. This is on Sunday.
At 6:30, we start.
6:30 to 7:30. Focus people. And Darren Ronan, you're performing at Dog Rose from 9 to 10 on Saturday. So
Correct.
Saturday and Sunday. And this is the first weekend of 4 weeks of concerts for the local showcase. Is that right?
I think it might be the second. I'm not really
I think it's
sure.
the
I think it's the
second,
second.
Oh, this is the second week. Sure.
I believe
Okay.
so. Mhm.
But anyway, there's venues, as we said, all over St. Augustine and just tons of music. It's indie, bluegrass, hip hop, everything that you can imagine. Well worth checking out, and it's free. So, Darren Ronan, Stacey Bennett, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. And that's our program.
For First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
Northeast Florida is losing tree cover. Join us September 17th for Adapt State of the Canopy, a discussion with local officials about their response